make sure that you can see me.
We got live. Got it, Darian. Let's see. All right, so we're gonna get rolling here. Once we got some technical difficulties with Darian, but we're about to get rolling here in a brief second. Let's see. If you have any athletes or any friends that have athletes, we definitely would want them to get on, share with them as much as possible. D, can you hear me? He got some Wi-Fi issues, so he's trying to fix that real quick. As soon as he gets settled, which shouldn't be long, we're gonna go ahead and roll through. I know there's been a lot of questions going on about the academy and the School of Momentum, so we want to take some time out and just introduce what that is. We're definitely super excited for it because we've been working on this for about 2 years, and so once D gets on, we're gonna go ahead and dive right into it on what the School of Momentum really is, and I think it's a wonderful concept that we all collectively came upon and develop. So once he gets on, we're gonna go. And I think there you go right there. Can you hear me, D?
Yeah, it's breaking up. I'm gonna try phone. I don't know if it's better.
Okay. Do you got the link? I can send you the link real quick. Let me send you the link. So he's getting back on. If you have friends or family or athletes, we definitely want to get them engaged with this. We think that this is going to be something huge for the community. We think this is going to be something big for. There you go.
And man, I don't know if it's my laptop or my iPad or what. Something wasn't working right. I had to switch to my phone.
Yeah, we're ready to roll now. So I told him, D, we're going to dive right into it and just kind of talk to him about what the School of Momentum is. I know that I'm super excited. I know this is something that we've been working on for like And it had to be at least 2 years in progress of working on this and really getting this up and rolling with the transition of traction and all the stuff that we had going on in that aspect in the for-profit. So, Dee, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself briefly, let the people know who you are. I'll come back, introduce myself, and we'll just dive straight into it.
So I'm Darian White. Everybody just calls me Coach White. Pretty simple. Darian the most. I've been with Traction since its inception 3 years ago. I was with the previous company that was the foundation, and this company prior to that for about 5 years, about 4 years. And so I coached the 7-on-7 program with Traction Athletic Performance, and now, which we will be talking about, I'll be helping direct the non-for-profit with the School of Momentum.
Yep. And my name is Dre Muhammad. I'm the founder of Traction Athletic Performance, and I've been in the training field for the last 8 to 9 years. And man, I'm just excited because this is part of the training that people don't see, and now we get to bring it to life with the academy and everything that we got rolling. And interesting enough, this academy again is one of our passions. We have a thing that we do that focuses heavily on relationships within our for-profit, which deals with the training side and everything like that. So what we've done is we've taken the for-profit, an aspect of that, removed it from the for-profit and put it completely into the nonprofit. So this is huge on relationships. This is going to be a big deal on really just taking the athlete and just trying to make the most out of their playing, the most out of their athletics, and then to make sure that they can, whether it's identify their purpose, service to the community, just build a better life through sports. Because I know there's a lot that we're missing in sports, man. It's just a lot that we don't get to experience because of certain situations or certain circumstances, whether it's the wrong approach into sports, whether it be just things that kind of cloud the true experience of sports. And now we get to lay it all here within Traction Academy. So before we dive into it, we want to talk about really just some of the issues in sports and to why this academy structure or model is really important. And that there's evidently a problem in sport, and in that problem, there's a solution. But we have to really do our part in terms of really executing this solution, because I believe that we are underserving when we're giving children less opportunities based on how we adults or we coaches or trainers are approaching sports and allowing them to approach sports. And so one of the issues that we have in sports right now is really the approach to sports, right? I think that, indeed, you can dive into these as we go through these problems, because evidently you're a coach, and so you see them all the time. But these are issues that we want to make sure that we can just pinpoint, and then we can just really challenge people to really adjust their approach to sports. One of the issues that I see in sports is that I think sports being played and the approach is too vain. I think a lot of people are playing sports for themselves. I do know that in certain communities, playing sports is all about how much money you can make at the end of the day. And I said to Austin Mack a few weeks ago in an interview that we did, that's on YouTube, is that I don't think a lot of people will play sports if money wasn't involved. And so I think the motive as to why we even are playing sports is really tainting the experience, and you can't get the most out of it. So it's really our approach, the money aspect, the vanity aspect. I think very few people actually play sports to impact and really affect change in the society, because most people are looking at athletes as entertainers, not educators, or people who can actually help. So, Dee, I didn't know if you want to add to that, but I just wanted to go through some of those issues in sports that we're going to be able to cover and be able to really, do the best job to make better.
Well, yeah, and over 10 years now, coaching on a high school level, I think we see a lot of these issues rear their head a lot. A lot of it has to do with everything you said about vanity. And a word now that we're using nowadays, you could replace vanity with is clout. And it seems like nowadays, if a player's playing the sport, it's usually because of the huge social media influence that it can have and the following that it can bring if you're a good player. sometimes I think with these kids that, you know, they care less about developing themselves as an athlete and
Yeah.
then using that to develop their character than they do about likes and posts on social media. And so a lot of times what we're seeing is it happens to be in all aspects of life. I know our subject here happens to be about sports, but for kids in this generation nowadays, everything's about social media and instant gratification. And so I think kids are really looking past the process of getting better just to get to the point where they can deem that they're good and that they are on some type of level. I mean, we hear it all the time when you talk about 4-star athletes, 5-star athletes, like they're playing to have a rating or a ranking somewhere rather than just to make themselves better people and better athletes. And it's not that that's a bad thing, because there's ways that we could use that to our advantage. But the problem is the kids don't want to put the work in to get there. They want to get to Chicago. They don't want to drive there. They rather just be there. And what we want to teach through the School of Momentum and everything that we've been about has been about embracing the path, because that's where the real change happens. I tell kids all the time, I coach at Bishop Luers High School, and we've been fortunate enough over the last few years to be involved in a few state title games, and we come home with these rings, and everybody loves the rings. But once you get one, you realize that the ring is really just a symbol of the whole path that it took to get there, that journey to get there. It's a symbolic representation of the struggle. And kids want to have the ring, but they don't want the struggle. And one doesn't go without the other.
Yeah. And both me and Darian have been in the path of some really good players that have came out of Fort Wayne. And one of the ones that I want to share with everybody and kind of just talk about our paths and how Darian was a coach with him at Luers. I was training him on the outside of it from a personal standpoint. You know, how this School of Momentum actually came into thought in regards to what we wanted to do with every single athlete that we possibly can do it with. And that athlete is Austin Mack. And Austin Mack was an athlete that Darian coached at Luers. It was an athlete that I started with when he was, I believe, he was coming out of his freshman year. And a little bit more about me is that, man, everybody has their different experience in sports, right? And so it's like when I was playing sports, there were so many things that had happened and so many different experiences that I just was like, man, I don't really enjoy playing a game like that. Like, I can still play it, but it's just not enjoyable. What is it that I'm gonna do with all these experiences that I can help other people? So when I first stopped playing, my thought was, you know, this the whole leave something better than when you found it. So if I was gonna leave a game, I was like, okay, before I'm done, all said and done, I want to pass it down to somebody that can put it in a better position than what I had. So when I left the game, I put a lot of energy into a lot of young individuals. And if you know me, you are been around me, you know that I spend a lot of time with children. And there's a lot of reasons why I spend a lot of time with children. But Austin Mack happened to be one of the first athletes that I spent a lot of time with. And when I say a lot of time, I'm talking Austin would spend the night over at the house. We would get up in the morning and go to work out at 5 a.m. He would come back home. And this is not every day, but it was some days. Then he would go work out at noon, come back with me. Then he'll go work out in the evening. And then for me, it was like, you know,
he was one of the original Dre Care members.
He definitely was one of the original Dre Care members. But for me, it was like, you know, are we going to keep on repeating this cycle? And is it just about sport? And I have to share this because, you know, obviously there's a separation that does exist in the country. And when I looked at Austin, the interesting thing for me is that obviously I think all communities need to improve. Every single last community needs to improve on whatever end of the spectrum they need to improve. And Austin was a mixed child who came from a white mother and a black father. And so for me, it was one of those things where I seen a guy here who was on both sides of the fence, right? And it was like, you know, we can help him. And because he's accepted by this group, maybe he can have a greater impact than somebody who's only on this side because he saw certain things and was able to see certain things. And so interesting enough, when I first got Austin, I said, you know what? And people disagree with this. They disagree. They don't disagree now because they see everything that's going on, but they used to disagree completely. I said, I'm gonna get Austin, and because I'm spending so much time with him, I'm gonna introduce him to so many things that normal children don't get introduced to. So I was introducing them to this. I was introducing them to that. I was helping them to understand this. So it was just like a clutter of things that we were trying to do. And he was young, so sometimes he got in trouble because he was going here and going there. He was all over the place at times. But at the end of the day, what happened was Austin was taught not only by his parents, because obviously the foundation has to be strong for him to even be able to do what he's doing. So his parents did a wonderful job with him, as many parents do. But sometimes children need somebody outside of the house to kind of help them and guide them and maybe say the exact same thing that the parents were saying, but they just received it a different way. And so I told Austin one day, I said, listen, man, I said, do you understand the power that you have? And he looked at me. There was a lot of things that I said to him. He just looked at me. He really didn't understand what I was saying. I said, you have the power to change literally the world. Like, you have that power. Why? Because you're a really good athlete. A lot of people look at athletes, whether it's for leadership, whether it's for a role model, they just look at athletes. And so how do we go about doing that on your platform? Well, let's become as good as we possibly can. Let's become notable, because if you become notable, people are going to start looking into you, looking up to you, looking at you, and they're going to probably lend an ear to you. And then once we do those things, let's do what we can to positively affect and change the current conditions of other people. And so Austin learned at an early age that we're not playing this game to service ourselves. Sort of like what we talked about. It's not about clout. It's about, can you develop a genuine love of people, and can you help service the need of the individual? And if you can do that, you don't ever have to play sports again. And so that was the approach with Austin. Now, by the grace of God, Austin has really developed into a really solid individual, solid human being. And he'll hear one of the super famous guy named Gary Vee, who will say, Austin Mack is going to be a Hall of Fame human being. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to be a Hall of Fame football player. He's going to be a Hall of Fame human being. And so when I look at that, I'm looking at somebody who's taken the steps, developed his craft, but then on the outside, or really on the inside, he's really developed who he was as an individual. And now you see him having the Mac Fest. Now you see him doing things in the community that maybe normal athletes don't do. Because my whole thing with that is, if you're a professional athlete, you're going to have more power being front line with the people than you will just in the back, just throwing money here and throwing money there. So this whole School of Momentum is really a thought, because the process that Austin Mack went through has been documented and has been, being lived out in our face, to where now any athlete that we get, and Darion's the same way, most of us are this way when it comes to the staff at Traction, is that we engage with athletes way beyond sports. If you come to me and you just want to talk about sports, you lost me already. And I'll respectfully have conversations here and there, but man, I want to know how you're doing. I want to know, what you're struggling with. I want to know what you want to do in life. I want to know how you want to impact the world. What do you want that leadership legacy, or that legacy, to be beyond just this physical game of football, basketball, soccer, whatever that is? That's what I want to know, because we have the power to do so. So that's where the Austin Mack, where Darion had an impact on him. Dre had an impact on him. Mike Lito had an impact on him. Virgil Thorpe had an impact. Antoine, Lawrence, Durante. There's so many people, Brian Bose, that we can say that impacted this one individual. And so I think that's the thing, is the School of Momentum is not just, we're just not throwing some stuff out there to say, hey, we just want to do a nonprofit. We want to do this and we want to. No, we literally want to develop a village of individuals to help children become as successful as they possibly become. And we won't doing it by ourselves. And any of us that think we can do it by ourselves, we're really crazy to think that we can, help somebody cultivate the way they want to be cultivated, or should be cultivated by ourselves. So I just wanted to throw that out there because Austin Mack is actually going to be one of the pro athletes that's going to be heavily involved in the School of Momentum. And he wants to take what he's been able to do, and he wants to be able to put it on to the other children that are committed to empowering themselves, committed to really just changing the culture of I'm doing this for myself. And I think that's the biggest thing is there's going to be representation for athletes in an athlete that's doing exactly what he wants to do. So that's what I just want to throw that out there. There's other reasons that we definitely want to hit on, and then we'll get right into the School of Momentum. And one of those issues is that, and Darian alluded to it, is that young athletes, they play this game to become professional athletes. Well, we know the reality is that less than 1% of people become professional athletes. So what happens to the 99.8 and 99.7 athletes that don't become professional athletes? And so this is all about approach. And so, D, I know you got some at your school that, they're looking at becoming pro athletes. They're not looking at the principles of why you should be playing the game and what can that do to your development off the field.
Right. And I mean, you talked about it. It's about influence. It's, our in American society, our athletes are our heroes. That's what they are. I mean, you grew up as a kid. I grew up as a kid. Posters on the wall. When we shoot the jumper, we're like Jordan. We're yelling somebody's name because we look up to these people so much. And so understanding what that influence can do to a younger generation, we knew early on that football was just a vehicle for us to get have influence with a larger group of people. And just talking about Austin in particular, when we talk about him as being a young kid, I can remember his freshman year in high school was Jalen Smith's senior year. So Jalen Smith was already this 5-star athlete, signed to go to Notre Dame, coveted by every college in the country. And he had to still go through his senior year with all of that pressure and perform. And I think it was really good for Austin to see him prior to him gaining his own notoriety. Because remember, Austin was just a freshman at the time. They had a lot of people who were looking at him and thought that he had a lot of potential, but he had to turn that potential into actual action. And so I think Jalen Smith's influence his freshman year with Jalen being the senior, and I have a picture, I keep it all the time. It's actually Austin's sophomore year where Jalen comes back from Notre Dame in his freshman year, and he's at Lewis practice, and he's pushing Austin. And so it's that kind of influence. He's pushing him. He's making him practice harder. And in the beginning, and I know very well, a lot of what we do as far as training outside of the high school program wasn't always looked at as being a value add to the athlete with a lot of people outside of just us. A lot of people had the assumptions that all we did was bring kids in and put some cones on the ground and make them run around a few cones or run through some ladders. And I think now what you're starting to see is we were a lot more than that, obviously, and we really built our foundation in developing good character athletes. And then from that, they're able to become great players. And I think most of that is because they have the right mind state going in. Again, Austin was a freshman. He didn't have the Ohio State offers, and none of that stuff was happening yet. And I could just remember him being under all this pressure to perform, because when Jalen left, Jalen was on the tail end of 4 state championships in a row. Freshman, sophomore, junior year, senior year, he won every year. So when he left and we're going into Austin's sophomore year, we didn't win a game. We lost every game that year. We lost every game with an Austin Mack. And so he had to learn how to humble himself and really be a leader for that team so that we could get back to winning. And I think we made it to a semi-state game that we lost a close one. So he didn't get a chance to win a state title, but we were game away. But one thing that we were always working toward was developing him, and you did a great job of this, was developing him to be a person that's going to be an influence outside of the game, even once the game ends. We didn't even talk about all the work that he did at Ohio State with the programs that he started there, with him giving his influence and feedback to the younger kids who were coming in to get them acclimated to being in school and what that's like to be a college athlete on a high level. And so your influence, our influence on him is being felt across the country now with him being with the New York Giants, and he's taking this same mentality into that. And for him in particular, it's always been about, he was never top 10 player, top 5 player. He really had to work himself there. And then once he was there, the pressure becomes even heavier once you attain that. And I think sometimes these kids don't realize that. is they work so hard to want to be the top player or whatnot. And then once they get there, they don't understand that the scrutiny is even more tenfold once you're there than it is on the way there. And so your work, our work really had to start accelerating once Austin wasn't a starter at Ohio State, once he was preparing for the draft, once he was a senior there and had a program where he was helping getting young athletes acclimated to what life was like as a student athlete at Ohio State. Even when he was drafted, even now, with him being on the Giants, he's still scratching and clawing to make more of his football career. And so I think he is a testament to everything that we wanted to do, that we put together with Traction and with the former company AWP, really giving us a base foundation in that, because they were really good with developing Jalen in that regard. And then that momentum just carried over, no, pun intended, that momentum carried over exactly into what we're doing now. And I think the School of Momentum is a great name to have, because what we're trying to do is take those same base, the base of that program, what we did before with our character development, and really expand upon that so that we're able to reach more kids and have even more influence with these student athletes as it pertains to developing soft skills and just things that they're not learning in any normal environment, especially not with any athletic group that they tend to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so I think that in itself is what separates us from any other group who can just throw cones on the ground. I mean, to be honest, training is difficult. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Most people think it is. So they think it's just throwing, some cones and some ladders on the ground, telling the kid to run to a cone and blowing a whistle. But it's so much more than that. And what we like to do is we like to have those personal conversations with the kids, because we like to let them know that it's more than them being an athlete. Of course, we use athletics because that's what unifies us. That's what brings us all together. But at the end of the day, if we can create great people, I think we've done our job at that point.
Mm-hmm. And even beyond great people, if we can create great people who can really have the courage to really challenge the narrative that exists in terms of division, and challenge the narrative that exists in terms of the society that we live in, that'd be even better. But it does start with great people, because great people can obviously make great leadership. One of the things that really stand out to me as it relates to dealing with athletes, and we've seen this during COVID, and we don't know if they're saying that there's going to be another shutdown. So that's quite possible. But the identity aspect, like one of the things that bothers me so much about dealing with athletes now, and I think it has existed in every generation, but more now, because I think there's more distraction. There's more things that take an individual away from the opportunity to know themselves, is that, man, they put so much of their identity into a game. And it's like, if I can't play football, if I can't shoot a basketball or go work out, I don't know who I am. Right. And I think that is, and this is going to come across a little negative, but I think that is poor leadership on whoever's in the leadership positions, not position, because this is a village thing now. But I think that's poor leadership approach, or maybe method for a child to feel like, oh, because I don't play sports, or because I can't play a game, I don't have an identity. I think that's all the way backwards. And so I think one of the things that we gotta just really just hit on as a really a group of people that are trying to cultivate children is, look, your identity before the game and beyond the game is much more than your identity inside of what you play. Like, if you take off your helmet, that person that exists is more valuable than a person that puts on the helmet. And I think we have to stop putting them in situations or directing them to where it's like, sports to me is almost like a daycare. Sometimes it's like, sometimes I feel like parents just throw children into sports because it's like, oh, well, I just need them to get off of me. I just need them to do something. And that's not a bad thing. But I think there has to be some guidelines that determine exactly, okay, when I throw them in here, first of all, why am I throwing them in here? Okay, maybe they need to get their energy off. They got too much energy. They need to get something off at the beginning. But then how long am I going to keep them in here just doing that? Is there anything outside of that? Like, one of the things that me and my wife always talk about is that, or not always, but we alluded to each other, is that we played sports growing up so much. And now seeing all the stuff that does exist outside of sports, I'm like, man, I missed so much opportunity to experience this that maybe had a positive impact on who I am today.
Yeah.
I'll miss this and I miss that. And it's like, dang, I've been so tied into sports for like 20 plus years of my life. And so I don't get mad when there's athletes who say, I'm tired of it. It ain't really a passion of mine. I can't do it. I'm cool with it. I'm fine with it. My whole thing is that, okay, if you're good with it, let's identify what you should be doing in this transition, because once you give your all to something and it's no longer there, it's like, what do you do now?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's an identity crisis, or, COVID's a pandemic, but there's an identity pandemic going on with children.
Yeah.
When it comes to who they are and who they should be. And I think sports takes so much away from it, and we got to be in a position to stop that and help that out as much as possible.
And I absolutely agree. And we have a kid that joined our program this past summer to help us coach with our 7-on-7 group. Mm-hmm. And that kid was a former player of ours. I wanted to mention his name, but he was a former player of ours and was a really good player. He was a great athlete, wanted to go play college ball. Was just unfortunately riddled with injuries. He had too many injuries to really continue his career any farther than where he wanted to. And he kind of disappeared for a little while. We didn't know where he was, and then he came back and he was interested in coaching. So we brought him into the fold with our 7-on-7 group this year. And I just remember after we won one of our first tournaments that we won, we had really good year last year, by the way. We won a lot of tournaments. And I think part of him coming along and being a part of that, we had a conversation at the end of the season where, he was literally in tears talking about how he was so fulfilled now with just being around a group of kids who are all excited about the game again, and being around us and our influence on the kids, and him seeing that, you can still find life around the game without playing. And I think for him, when I talked to him, because I pulled him to the side, I just wanted to thank him for coming along and helping us out, and I didn't even realize the conversation I was walking myself into, but he just started going into how he had lost his identity. He didn't know who he was. Once he had stopped playing football, he had always identified himself with being a great football player, with one of the hardest workers, the first one in the gym, the last one to leave. And then when the injuries happened and he could no longer do any more of that, he kind of resulted into he became a workout junkie. And he wanted to just work out all the time. And now he started to identify himself with just working out and just really almost, in a sense, torturing his body because he needed an outlet. And so when he came along with 7-on-7, there was I can obviously see such a release there for him, because he was able to identify with the sport again without putting himself through all the stress that he was doing with just working out every day and putting himself through the ringer. And I think that's the stuff that we want to do. We want to have those conversations with people, because that is lost so much, especially in high school athletics, when the focus is so much on winning. Coaches need to win. Otherwise, you get kind of talked bad about in the media. Yeah. They can't ever make you really walk away. You're going to have to do it on your own. But at the same time, hey, they can kind of make it uncomfortable for you where you do want to walk away. And so there's an emphasis on winning so much and developing players, and they don't really get into, and I work in a high school program, and we do everything we can to be there for the kids more than just athletics, but because there's a school element tied to that, but it tends to be just about academics and then athletics. The character part of it never really gets focused on. And that's just the majority of high school programs. When I was at Southside, when I grew up, when I went to Southside High School, and literally one of our issues over there was just making sure that all the kids ate before they came to practice. So there's a whole different focus depending on where you are, but very little of them really deal with character development and what these kids are going to be when they stop playing the game, because that's what's more important. You're going to have more years of your life where you're not an athlete than you do when you are. Hopefully. That's the hope. As long as we're healthy and we live a long time, that's going to be the way it is. A lot of us are done playing in our mid-20s. That's it. And then we have to live another 60 years or so with a broken identity because we no longer can identify with the game anymore. A lot of us turn to coaching. I think that's why, and if I told my own story, that's the reason why I turned to coaching. I felt like there wasn't enough that I got out of the game that I wanted to do more and be able to help more. So I got into coaching. And my story, kind of just real quick, I grew up in Chicago and I always wanted to play football. Well, Chicago had a really bad gang issue, still does nowadays. And I could only play sports places that were close to home because I had to walk. Mom and dad both worked. So I really didn't have the luxury of being able to get dropped off anywhere. So I had to walk or take the bus wherever I was going. So football just happened to be too far away and through too much gang territory for me to even play football. So I never played. I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, my freshman year in high school, and I started playing football. And I literally had to have people tell me how to put my pads in my pants. I had no clue how to do that. And so the learning curve for me was really, really steep. And then within 4 years, I was able to get a scholarship to the University of St. Francis. But even in my 4 years at the University of St. Francis playing football, I was still learning the game. I didn't understand the game very much. And so when I was done after 5 years, I felt like I was really shorted. I hadn't gotten enough out of the game because I was spending the whole time learning. I could never really get out there and really show what it is I knew. And so that propelled me right into coaching because I wanted to make sure I reached kids early enough to help them develop so that they can get to the point where they can just operate and just play and not have to think about anything. So I wanted to make sure we gave the game to them. But along the same lines, it was about developing their character, because I realized along the way, especially after college, of how so many people who were done playing at that point, because usually college, if you're good enough to go to college, that's the last time you play. There were so many of us who just really didn't even know what to do once we were done. It was like, I don't even know who I am. What do I do? And so we try to grasp anything to try to make us feel whole again. And so I really wanted to make sure that we were giving kids an outlet to where we can give them something that they could do when they were done. So I love the fact that we have a lot of our high school athletes coach teams, because I think for them that almost gives them a point of transition for them if they're done playing, that there's always the option to come back and coach, because then now you can instill in kids the same information that you've gotten along the way through our program. And so a lot of my story has to do with why we're doing what we're doing today, is because I feel like the more information that a kid can have going into an opportunity, the better he is going to be prepared for that opportunity and the better he's going to operate in it. And so the whole character development part of it is so big, because if you cannot think right, then you can't act right physically, because everything in physical reality happens in the mind first. So if we clean up the mind first and we take care of that and we give kids good tools to take with them when they leave our programs and they have to go home to environments that aren't the best environments. I mean, we only have the kids for so long. We have to equip them to win. So when they do leave us to go back into whatever environment that they're going into, that they have enough tools that they can survive that long enough to get back to some good character development again. And so, I just wanted to tell a little bit about where I came from and why this means so much to me. I think guidance is the key, man. I think having good guides and good people in front of you who've been there before, who have a real heart for you and care about your direction outside of sports. I've seen so many times where we're dealing with an issue now at Lures. We had a kid get in a little bit of trouble. You may have to leave the school. Our communication with that kid shouldn't end once he's no longer a football player. Yeah. In fact, he needs us more now than he did when he was playing football. And I think sometimes coaches lose that. It's like, if you don't have a value for me on the field, you have no value, because it's a selfish mentality of we just want to win. We want to develop a program. And that's not what we do. That's not what we're in it for.
Yeah. And this is the challenge, is that the challenge is really the reason why an academy is because I think that if you do have a passion, so if you have a passion for children outside of the game, then you need to provide opportunities for them outside of the game. And, I can say, okay, well, we're getting into it. We may be getting into it a little bit later than what I wanted to. But the reality that you stated is that, man, there's so many coaches who only care about how good are you at this angle or this catch, and how explosive you are. There's coaches who literally treat players better because they have a certain athletic gift that others don't have. And it's really a sickness in my mind. If you can treat somebody better because they have a certain gift that another individual doesn't have, then that's the issue. And you shouldn't. I mean, there has to be some guidelines set, for individuals to be vetted through, because the people you put in front of children are so critical to their development. And I feel personally that nowadays they just throw anybody in front of children. They don't stand through how this person thinks, this person, what's his motive, what's her motive. They're just throwing people in front of children. And I can't be mad if a children doesn't respect a certain person because they may know certain things or see certain things. And I have an issue with that. And so my biggest fight when I first got into this industry was, I am pro athlete. And what I mean by that is any athlete that comes through the door of Traction or any other facility, but obviously if it's Traction, I have a more intimate relationship with you. But my fight is for you. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about, how this person felt, how that person felt. My fight is for any child that comes through that door because they all face certain issues. And there's so many children who, when you talk about development, there's so many children who may not necessarily have certain gifts that haven't been cultivated or brought out of them. But you know as well as I know, been doing this for a while, man, you see so much coming out of children after a certain time. And that brings me to another point. Not only do some of these people don't care about, outside of the game, they don't know how to bring out the best of individuals, which brings us to our next point is I think one of the issues, and I think why the academy is so critical is because when you look at the traditional school system, meaning that you go to school, you learn this criteria, you learn that category, you learn this subject. You look at all of these things, and to me, it's like there's no class that a player can go to or a student can go to that can identify their purpose in life. Mm-hmm. Like there's no class that a child can go to say, okay, I'm learning about all these other subjects. Can I learn about myself? Right? It's because there's so much that children need to learn about themselves, and there's so much that they can learn about themselves at an early age that I think that there has to be some type of course or courses that furthers a child's understanding of themselves that will allow them to master the other subjects that they're actually going into, right? Because it's all integrated, it's all connected, interconnected in some capacity. So, the traditional educational system is what we want to complement. And so our whole thing is, when we get into this, like, it's hard to tell a child to learn this subject if they don't know much about themselves, right? Because oftentimes they turn into robots. They get to become really good at a certain subjects, and then they lose themselves by spending so much time or investing so much into a subject outside of themselves. And so that's one of the things that I struggle with, and that's one of the things that I want to make sure the academy can bring is an opportunity for children to learn more about themselves. Now we can say, how does that work? There's people who have spiritual backgrounds. There's people who have just principle backgrounds, whatever that may be, whether it's your religious belief, whether it's your religious, what's the word I'm looking for? Just keep it at that, religious belief or whatever. There's things that allow you to learn more about who you are, right? From just a core of how you were created and who you are, and from a purpose standpoint. And my whole thing is, I don't care how much a person learns about math. I don't care how much a person learns about language. If they don't know who they are, then at some point they're going to get into a situation where they're going to struggle completely. Because nowadays, when we talk about purpose, let's be real, and it may offend older people, but younger people. How many older people do you know nowadays that hate the position that they're in? Just hate their job. Mm-hmm. They're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to work here. Like, and then we get in this traditional thought that, oh, just go get a good education, go make a lot of money, and then you'll be fine. Okay, money is important. You want to make a lot of money, but your purpose is going to make room for that money to come in. So if you can identify what your purpose is and you can operate in it, you're going to be able to make the money that you want to make, because it's a whole world of 7 billion people that need your services or need you as an individual. And if you can identify what that purpose is, you're more valuable to the world than somebody who is not operating their purpose and they just happen to be really good at not operating at their purpose and making a lot of money. That's what we're doing. And so I think that's one of the things that we want to tackle is, man, we got to help children or athletes identify who they are as individuals. And if we can help them understand their purpose, then we are giving them a chance to fulfill or really maximize their potential and who they are. So when we leave this plane, we leave this realm of earth, it's like, okay, I've done what I needed to do before I've gone. So many people die before they die. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I ain't trying to be in a situation where I got children dying before they should be dead, or before it's their time to go, I should say. And what I mean by that is, when you don't operate in your purpose, and that's the purpose that God gave you, you are dead in terms of your fulfillment and your potential and your ability to reach your potential before you have to physically go. And I'm just not interested in it. And so many of us have done that. It's like, we know. My brothers used to work at Myers or Meyer. I put the S on it. You know how we put the S on everything. But they used to work
Progress.
and they used to work at Meyer, and I used to watch them push carts. And I was like, man, they got better character than me because I am not doing a job that I don't want to do. And to this day, there's probably been maybe one or two jobs that I've done that that I didn't like doing. And I'm gonna tell you, I was on the job for like 2 weeks. I wasn't even on a job for that long. I said, man, I just can't do it. And so I think when it comes to children, let's not get so caught up with, you got to get this education to get this degree so you can make this amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Now with YouTube University, you can learn anything on YouTube. And if it fits your purpose, then you can go out without a degree, because really your degree is already written inside of you. It's your purpose. It's you mastering your skill set and your purpose that God gave you. And God knows you best. So if he gave me a purpose, that's what I want to operate in. And that's what I think the academy has to be, or our focus really is. And we have to be really proficient in it, because there's not a lot of opportunity for children to really get to know themselves outside of, where they are.
Yeah. And I mean, you talked about the traditional school system, and really the traditional school system was built in a way to be sort of like an assembly line process.
Yeah.
All the kids come in the same way, dressed the same way. We send them all in the same room, in the same rows, and then we all yell at them and say the same information, and then we pass them to the next class that does the same thing. You do that over 4 years, and then you push them out into the world, and then you've effectively taught them to be, mildly educated robots for the most part. In the system, and nowadays you're starting to see more variety in the school systems. Like you have your Montessori's, who tend to try to be a little bit more subjective, where it's the individuals kind of have their own curriculums. And then you have places like New Tech who are starting to change some of the ways that they're delivering the information to the students. So I think we're seeing some progress in those areas. But what I'm not seeing in any of that is character development, where you're actually talking to each individual about the things that they like, the things that make them tick. What makes you upset? What makes you happy? When do you feel the best? When do you feel the worst? See, we always like to talk about all the good stuff, the winning, the getting better. I got a new max, or I caught 10 passes last week. But we don't talk about the bad stuff, or the tend to be more negative stuff. Like, what triggers your negative emotions? What makes you angry? Why do you have stress or anxiety? We don't ever want to talk about those or have those conversations in a school setting. And I think what we're trying to do with the School of Momentum is, like you said, be complementary to the traditional school system and go in those areas where we spend time with the individuals, and the focus is the individuals and their own personal progress. And the first step to doing that is you have to understand how you tick and what makes you move. And the regular school system just doesn't do that for you. And so I think, obviously, what we're trying to do is also give them things that they can take into practical reality. So, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of the programs that we're going to have with the School of Momentum. But the entire point of the programming is to give these kids something to where, if sports never worked again for them, because you're an injury away from your athletic career being over. And so, if we just focused our attention all the time, and as trainers in football and in other sports, just athletically, on the athlete and the physical aspects of the person, we're shortchanging them. We're not doing them a service, because they're one freak accident away from all of that being over. And now you start to lean on what we talked about earlier. What is your identity now that you're not an athlete? And so if we haven't worked on that before that catastrophic injury happens, then usually there's going to be a lot of work after that to get this kid back to being whole again. And we can tell stories about athletes that we've had that have gone through some really bad injury history, and really we had to be there to support them in an aspect that had nothing to do with them being athletes, but just for them to be focused and more aware of their own emotions and how they're feeling and how they're going to navigate that issue to get back to whatever it might be. It might not be playing again. It could just be getting to the point where I'm okay with not playing again, to where now I can start to activate some of those other gifts that that I have that are outside of athletic gifts. And that's what we're about. We're about Let's find out what those gifts are that are off the field that you have in you, because we all have them. We're all proficient and special in different ways and in different areas outside of athletics, even if it might be that we are great athletes. I mean, some of the best athletes we've had, they always have something else that they're really good at. And you'll never know until you talk to them and you actually sit them down. We've got kids that are great content creators. They just understand how to do it. We've got kids. I mean, we've got a kid right now who's a great piano player. I mean, you would have never known, if you were just talking to him about school. But what we want to do is be there as a support system for these kids so that they can look at themselves as being more than the athlete. And like we said before, anybody can treat these kids, with white gloves because of their athletic ability. But who's going to talk to them and give them that kind of attention and fill into them when they're not giving you something in return as far as wins or losses on a football field?
Yeah. And so just kind of covering what we did before we go on to what the School Momentum actually is. Me and Darian are actually just talking about some of the problems or the issues that exist within sports and why Traction Academy, which is the School of Momentum, why that's going to be necessary and why we believe it's going to be a huge success when it comes to actually helping athletes identify who they are, helping athletes with community engagement, all those things that you don't typically get in traditional school. And some of the issues that we talked about was really just one of them was the approach to sports. A lot of times we approach sports with a mindset that we plan to make a lot of money, one. We plan for some type of glory, and we don't approach it with a principle mindset, meaning if I know that sports is only going to last for so long, what can I do to take these principles or these characteristics that I've learned from sports and actually become successful outside the game, right? They say sports teach you so much. The issue is that sometimes people don't actually go into what they're teaching and how to actually apply what that is in outside life or in the real world. One of the other things that we talked about is the lack of identity and how athletes spend so much time in the game, so much time training that they get lost into it. And when it's gone, i.e. COVID takes it away or other things take it away, maybe an injury, they're so lost into what they were doing that they don't know who they are. So our challenge is that we want to have athletes spending so much time with themselves that their secondary thing to do is probably sport or whatever that thing is that you want to do as a family, that value system that you want them to spend more time on, whether it's academics or whatnot. But sports can never be plan A, is what we're trying to say. If sports is plan A, then you have somebody that's guiding you in the wrong manner, or you just don't understand clearly what should be the true plan of your life. We also talked about guidance in sports, having a supporting cast, and with a sensitive generation of not only children but parents. Sometimes it becomes super hard to guide children because don't talk to my child like this, or don't holler at my child, or my child is feeling this type of way. And that's all sometimes it's valuable, or sometimes it's actually true. But the reality of it is that it does take a village. And sometimes you need that mean uncle, that mean auntie to make you see certain things. Sometimes you need that soft auntie, that soft uncle. You just need a different dynamic of people who have the right intent. They don't have to actually approach it the right way, although we do recommend that they do. But they have to have the right intent. And if they have the right intent, then we should judge them off the intent, not the actual how they're doing something, because we can always adjust how they're doing it. But it's hard as hell nowadays to find people with the right intent. It's just really hard. The other thing we talked about is really the system, the educational system, and how it's really more informational than it is inspirational. We are trying to create a culture or an environment where it's focused on the inspiration, because one of the most misunderstood words is education, because education itself means to bring out what's already in. Yeah. Which means that you have gifts, talents, skills that are embedded in you that we have to cultivate you. And it's one of those one illustrations when you see somebody, I don't even know what the tool is, but they're like mining. And then one of the things is when you mine something, it's like really dark. So you got to have a light. And one of the issues is that we're trying to cultivate and we're trying to mine something out of children in dark areas where we don't even have light. So we don't even have knowledge in certain areas, and we're trying to actually get them to understand certain things. So that's why supporting cast is critical, because I don't know everything. You don't know everything, but there are certain things that we do know, certain things that we have learned or experienced that we can actually help children with. And we want to be able to support them with the right people. And so supporting cast is going to be critical.
And that's why it's important to have parents that are bought in. I mean, and sometimes we don't. I mean, obviously we get kids from all walks of life, and we would love, in an ideal situation, we would love to have all the parents be involved. But when the parents are involved, that just helps us fortify what we're teaching so much more, because now when you go home, they're able to practice those principles at home too as well. And then a lot of times, to be honest, we get the kids, but we end up working with the parents a lot. I mean, we just even last year during George Floyd, we had an entire group discussion where we allowed our players to bring their parents in so that we can have a tough conversation about some of the differences in opinion on what was happening with that case, and then just the different ways the kids were brought up and some of the things that they're seeing at home that's in contrast to what they're seeing on TV. And so that was more of an activity for the parents than it was for the players. I mean, the players were there, they listened, but really the parents were the ones that were actively communicating during that whole time. And so when you have a complete involvement from the parent and then also the child, I think it just becomes more sticky that way. And just going back to what you were saying about these kids and them having influence, especially when they're high level athletes. We've been fortunate in recent history to have a lot of high level athletes. I mean, honestly, if you look at Friday nights, a lot of those guys, I take a lot of pride in knowing when I'm reading down through the leaders of the SAC and the leaders of the SWAC and all these different conferences that there are kids. And
that's good. I don't mean to disrupt that comment.
Go ahead.
Let me say something, because I think something gets so misconstrued and there's a misperception. When we get children, they're not high level. And so a lot of people think that we just pick this person, pick that person. When we get children, they are not high level. Hence to why it's important that you surround your children with people who understand what they're doing. Do I know everything? I absolutely do not know everything. There are certain areas that I'm really good at. Same thing for Darian, same thing for Twan, same thing for LB. When we get children, when it comes to developing athletes, when it comes to challenging individuals, we make up the total body of what that supporting cast looks like. But each one of us, we don't have it at that moment. So when Darian speaks on high level athletes, I just want to clear it up, because they're not coming in high level. Some may have a little bit more than others, but they're going through a process. And that's why I think the academy is going to be, I believe, and I'm just going to say, I know it's going to be super beneficial to people, because our children and parents and anybody that's involved, because the minds that are involved in the academy development and the minds and the intent that make up the people that are going to support the children or the athletes in this process are in it for the right reasons. And we know that it's not a one size fit all. Not every child that we get is going to be, we got to do this, this, and this. Then we get the next person's like the same thing. It's like, no, there are certain people who need certain things, and we all have different upbringings. So I just wanted to clear it up, but I don't want to cut you off too bad.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of times we're looking for the potential. We're not a lot of times. I mean, if the kid's already good, of course we'll take him, because we can help him even refine what he's already has. But for us, the biggest get for me as a coach is I like to inspire. I coach inspiration. That's what I coach. I mean, X's and O's. I'm not the best in the world. I mean, we can sit down on a chalkboard and it's okay. But to be honest, I can influence the crap out of your kid. That's what I do. I get with him and I get him to believe in himself. And then we give him a program on how he can be a better player. And then we help him execute that program. But initially, in the beginning, it's about that kid. It's not about his athletic ability. And I think the only way that kid can even buy into what it is that you're telling them is if they understand that you have a vested interest in them and not just what they can do. Yeah. And then on the other side of that, as the parents, as we're asking more parents to be involved, especially when we start doing the School of Momentum, is they have to be able to trust us too. And so us having really good character people around is really important, we talk about this all the time in meetings. It's hard for us to really expand and just start bringing in trainers and coaches and doing things like that because of how strenuous our vetting process is for individuals. Because we want to make sure that they are in line with our character, they're in line with what we believe, and the whole reasoning for them being there is on accord with the reasons why we're there. Yeah. And so, and I think one of the things that we do that's excellent is not being able to show these kids our own shortcomings. I mean, we've been in sessions where you've talked about areas you've needed to improve on. I've talked about areas I've needed to improve on. And I think kids really can open up a little bit more to you when they realize you're not perfect too. I think sometimes as parents and as influencers, as coaches, as administrators, or whatever we might be in positions of power, we come so much from an angle to these children as if we're perfect and we know it all. But really, we don't. I mean, I tell my kids all the time when I'm struggling, when I got anxiety, when I got depression, when I don't want to get up, I let them know about those moments because they're going to have them too. And if they can understand that I can go through it and I can get up and go, and then they can do the same thing. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is really create a fraternity-like environment, you know, not all about the partying and all that stuff, but really a place where these kids for the rest of their lives, no matter what it is that they're doing or going through, whether they're an athlete or not, back to us for some good, helpful soul food. And we want to be available for these kids for that reason. And everything that we're doing with this this momentum, this School of Momentum, is going to be geared around creating a place where kids can go through the program, leave the program, have success, maybe not have success, but also know that if they're not, or if they are, they can come back home. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah, and speaking on transparency and just trust, I would say that the parents are going to play a critical role in all of this stuff. I can tell you now that the most successful children that I've seen, because again, we're separating. So to everybody that's just now getting on, basically what we're doing is we're separating half of the Traction for-profit and we're putting it into the nonprofit, which is the Traction Academy School of Momentum. And in the School of Momentum, that is going to be geared around really the human development side, the community engagement, and then as well as some entrepreneurship stuff as well. So we have some stuff outside of what we do from a training perspective that you're going to see a lot of, and we're going to actually amplify so you can see all of what we do instead of it just being thrown here and there. But to speak on the success, we need the parents just as much as they'll probably need this program. And why do we need the parents is because it's hard for us as people who have families, people who are only around the children for a certain amount of time. It's hard for us to compete with 22 hours a day. Now in school, you got about 7 hours with the school, the rest with, you know, practice, whatever. So, but for the most part, it's hard for us to have 2 hours a day, maybe 8 hours a week, to compete with individuals who have their children for like 85% of the time. And so the things that we have to do is have to become on the same page, because there are certain things that have to be instilled into these athletes, or I want to say instilled, but they have to be taught and trained in these athletes and these children so they can be the most successful they can possibly be as they go through stuff. And one of the most trusting relationships I had when I first started was, I remember Austin Mack mom. She came to me one day, and I was young in this. I was trained. I didn't know a lot of stuff that I knew now. But she came to me and she said, "Well, what do you want me to do? Like, what is my role?" And without even thinking, I said, "Just be a mom. That's all I want you to do. Just be a mom." Because I was going to take full responsibility for how this dude was going to go through this athletic process. But then to make his parents proud, I was going to introduce him to, let's change the world through sports. Like, let's figure out how we can do this. People won't understand now, but down the road, they'll understand. So now when you go to the MacFest and you see Austin doing all the stuff that he's doing, that's been years of seeds being dropped in his head to say, hey, look, man, you just more than a football player. Most people that know Austin, like truly know him, they know that he went to Ohio State. And he helped change the culture at Ohio State. He created a whole organization that was redefining athletic standards. And in a nutshell, that's what we're doing too, is we're redefining athletic standards. And it doesn't matter how good of an athlete you are. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. Yes, we want to cultivate that and improve those. But what matters is that you have a platform. And so if you have a platform, that may be certain individuals may only have one individual that they're going to impact, right? I believe that it only takes one child to change the world. I'll stand on that belief till I'm gone. And if I can find one child that's committed to their growth, I'm fine with only investing in that child. Now, me, I want to help as many children as I possibly can. But also, I understand that sometimes parents don't have the same value in helping their children grow at the capacity that maybe we may have. And that's not neither bad nor good, but it makes it harder to be on the same page when I have a parent that's not fully invested into their child. And maybe, you don't want them to worry about anything other than just becoming faster or just becoming stronger. I mean, those are the things that we'll struggle with, is that, this program, to be quite honest with you, is not going to be a program that everybody's going to have a chance to be involved with. We're literally looking for individuals who are committed to themselves and committed to impacting the world. And whether that's locally at a school, whether that's regional in college, or whether that's on a grand scale as you get older, even with social media, we're looking for those individuals that are committed to themselves. I don't want to have to spend time with a child in a program for 20 years. And it's like, well, I ain't really committed. It's like, if you're not really motivated to impact the world or committed to change your condition, change maybe your family condition or whatever, then it's gonna be a divorce right away. Like, we might not even get far in this situation. And that doesn't mean I gave up on them. It just means that it just may not be the right fit for them.
Right. And no, what you're saying is absolutely right. One of my mentors, they said one time, I was listening to him speak, and they said, stop trying to save all the kids. They said that you got to stop trying to save all the kids. What you do is you go save the kid across the street that needs you. You know, if you got a kid right across the street from you right now that needs your help, go help them. Instead of thinking, well, before I go help that kid, let me develop this whole thing that I have to do, and we're gonna try to get 400 kids to come in the room. Go help the kid across the street, and then you help the next kid you see, and that's the way to do it. So we're not trying to cast a large net, and this isn't about quantity. We don't want to just pull every kid from the southeast side of town into a room and try to give them some character development. What we want to do is there has to be kids who want to be a part of it too as well, because I think we're just going to have more traction that way, pun intended, when there's actually some influence from the other side to want to be a part of it. But you mentioned platform, and it's nowadays with social media, everybody's given a platform. Before, when we were growing up, you had to have had some type of influence around the people around you first, that somebody had to have taken notice with in order to give you a platform. And then you had a platform and had to try to figure out what you could do with it. Nowadays, if I got an email address, I can log on to Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, or whatever it is, and create a platform for myself. So with the ability for it to be so easy nowadays, and for any kid that's an athlete to do it, we want to make sure that the kids that we have under this Traction umbrella, when they do go to get on their platform, because we want them all to be on the platform, because our idea is about reaching as many people as we can and inspiring as many as we can. When we're just going to teach them the right skills to go about doing that, so that when you do have that platform, like we talk about a Deuce Taylor, a kid that has some of the most influence that I have seen in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in high school sports in a long time. They just gravitate toward him. I mean, some people are that way, but we've really had to have long conversations with him, and he's an excellent kid in as far as his effort from his end on trying to improve himself, because of him realizing the type of platform that he has. And that comes from him having great parents. Antoine and Levine are great parents, so they raised him that way. But a lot of what we do is definitely instilled in him. So we saw how he was able to handle his platform and help inspire others. And Destiny Jackson's another one. Somebody who's taken their influence in sports, taking that platform and using different ways to inspire people outside of just athletics. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to give these kids a good tool bag to go out and make that happen. And
to make it a little bit more relevant to some of the parents that are on, when we talk about impact, and I want to share this because it's going to come out. It's going to come out I don't know how soon, but it'll eventually come out. Most people do not know. Most people do not know that. So this is really my passion. This is something that I'm not vain, and I don't really get caught up in that stuff. I mean, but like behind the scenes, like my greatest investment outside of my family is in these children. Like I put a lot of time into these children because I just love doing it, and I feel like I'm built, or I know I'm built to do it. And we have coaches surrounding us who just love being around children. And it's very interesting because the MacFest itself originated, not necessarily the name, but the concept originated from Destiny Jackson. And so here you have a high school, at the time, a high school lady, young lady, female, who she was the originator of the MacFest in terms of what it was. So when people see it, they see MacFest. Now, Austin obviously is called the MacFest because he came in, they named it the MacFest, but when he came in, there were some adjustments being made, whatever. But the original thought came from Destiny Jackson. She would be at character development sessions with us. She would be around and she would just take notes. And she would say, she was a little bit excessive, and she would say stuff like, I don't even care if I play basketball. Like, I don't care. And I'm just like, whoa, like, you just got an offer. Like, you need to chill out.
Relax.
We'll play basketball. But she was able to identify who she was in the last year or two and become so comfortable and confident who she was that she was like, I don't need the game to do anything for me. It's done enough. And she would utilize her influence and what she has learned through character development. And she says stuff like, I'm about to change the world. And it was from somebody like me who's saying, we want to change the world. It was uncomfortable for me to hear. I'm like, whoa, she on a whole nother, because she caught the belief and she ran with it. Now I don't have to say anything to Destiny Jackson. And my wife was a huge influence on her, which goes to show you that she was never the Austin Mack. She wasn't that top athlete in the country. She was a really good basketball player locally, got a deal on offer. And she had such an impact that when Austin Mack heard the vision, Austin Mack ran with the vision and they collabed with the vision. And so what I'm saying is that if a high school female as such, meaning that, you know, in this day and age, a lot of people, for some reason, so society, they don't put a lot of weight on female athletes. Like female athletes can't change the world or something like that. A female athlete had a vision, put the vision in rotation. Once it was heard by the right person, they took the vision, and the MacFest now is what it was. And if you look at the impact that the MacFest had and the environment that it was in, it was probably one of the better environments that I've ever been in terms of just being around a culture and really just trying to, you know, do right by people and have this vibe and really have that brotherhood or sisterhood that I've ever seen. And it all started because a young lady was old enough and strong enough to accept herself, be confident in her development, and say, I'm about to do this. And she was planning it for a year, and it was slow. Then Max said, oh, what you trying to do? Let's do it. Yep. And then, like, and if you know Mac is intelligently stubborn. So he's like, if I'm gonna do something, I'm doing it. I don't care about what you saying, what you think. Oh, it's good. We're gonna do it. So he just ran with it, and it was a success. So each one of us have children that have this ability to impact society. It doesn't matter where you come from, where you are. You have the ability to impact society. Why are we prevent our children from impacting society? Because, and I don't want to get too far, but the scripture says the young is going to lead the old.
Right.
So I'm not old yet. I'm not going to put myself in that boat.
Yep.
But if the young is going to lead the old, then us that's older or the elder, we need to help and just move out the way and let them lead the way, because that's where everything's going to come from.
Right. They say a child will lead them. And a lot of that has to do with, if you just think about the allegory of it, it has to do with having a new look on life. So when you're an adult, you have all of these different things that you build up in your ego over time, these fears that you develop, these ways about yourself. Like, this will never work because of that. I tried that before, it won't work. So a lot of times, like you said, we're stubborn. Like you were talking about a little bit about how Matt can be stubborn sometimes. And as an adult, we tend to be that way because we feel like through our own personal experiences, we've got all the answers going forward. What a child does then is comes in with a new perspective, and it doesn't look at it the same way you do. They don't have all of that experience to draw off of to tell them whether they can or can't do something. So a child's mind is so fresh that you really want a child to lead because they'll have fresh ideas. Now, obviously, that child has to have some good character development. You know, you want to make sure they've had a good foundation so that when they do lead, you know, they can lead the right way. But the whole point of them saying a child will lead them is really a childlike mentality of seeing everything for the first time again and not having those preconceived notions and these judgments that we put on everything that we develop through our ego over time as adults.
Absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit, well, a lot of it about the problems, some of those things that why the academy or the School of Momentum actually got started. So now we just want to dive in a little bit before 8:30 as to what that actually looks like a little bit. Right now, if you're interested, what you should do right now is text Momentum. If you look at the bottom of the screen, it tells you text Momentum to 260-217-4881. If you text Momentum, what'll happen is you'll get put on a text app, and then you'll be able to get information as we develop the information as we go, because we'll actually start the School of Momentum in October, right? And we're going to treat this is going to be as serious as any school that they go to. Obviously, we do know that it's not the priority because these boys have to, and these young ladies have to go to school, and even open to college athletes. We'll have some college athletes that will be involved with the School of Momentum as well. But this is going to be critical because, again, the outcome for us is it's not about Darian helping this player get this and Darian getting all the credit or the School of Momentum getting the credit for this. This is about how do we transparently, how do we, from an intent standpoint, a positive intent, get these young athletes to get more out of this experience than what we had. And most of us were bogged down by certain experiences that didn't allow us to get the most. So that's our outcome. If we can develop mini Max, mini Destinies, utilizing those two mini Deuce Taylors as it relates to the intent and the willingness to step outside of themselves and go serve the world, that's what we're trying to do. That's our outcome, and it's going to look different from every single individual.
And our communities need it. I mean, more so than any other time, they need it. And these kids need it. With everything that happened with COVID over the last few years and quarantines and being shut in and not being able to do things, we really need each other right now more than anything else. We really need to feed off each other and then be able to influence each other in the right way. And everything you said is absolutely right. If we could create mini Max or mini Destinies, or just to give it a name, an idea of what it is that we're talking about, that can go back to their own communities, to their own schools, and be positive inspirations to people there, then that's how we start to change the world a little bit at a time. I mean, me and you, we might not ever see what that looks like. You know, it might be years and years from now, but what we're trying to do is create a very grassroots organization that's going to plant some real seeds that we'll see some real results and some real growth from. I mean, everybody likes, you know, prayer walks and things like that. Those are cool, but we want to see some action. We want to put people out here in the community that are actually going to make some change and some influence.
Yeah, and the prayer that we're going to throw up is going to be a movement prayer. So we're going to physically be doing some things and not just praying, although both are critical.
They're both important.
Both super important, but we're going to start moving, and we're going to give these athletes and serve them as much as possible so they can serve the world and maximize everything. So phase one for us is this. And again, you'll learn more. So we're going to start October 2021. So that's in about a month. We are only going to accept 50 athletes. We are not accepting any more than 50 athletes. That is going to be grade 7 all the way up to 12. And we'll have some college athletes that'll be a little bit more it'll be more virtual than it will be physical until they get back. but we're only going to accept 50 athletes. The reason being is that we want to make sure that we can do this the right way. We don't want to have so many athletes involved that we can't properly go through this. And what's the process when they start? So the process is that, and let me go back real quick, because I know one of the most sensitive things that people don't want to know about is, does it cost? Because if it costs, that may be the reason why I'm not doing it. And my answer is yes, it does cost. It's not expensive. The academy or the School of Momentum is going to be done in 12-week increments. And so it's going to be done like any semester, a typical semester in school. And the cost for a 12-week semester is $300. I think the math on that may be 25 or 30 some dollars a week, less than that a little bit, but it's going to be $300. That $300 is going to pay for materials that they need, the readings that they need. It's going to pay for the resources that's needed, because we are partnering with individuals and we are partnering with organizations that we have to expense out. So it does cost. Again, it's $300 for 12 week, which is one semester. There's going to be live virtual classes. There are going to be in-person classes. There's going to be weekly assignments and weekly readings. There's going to be community service projects that's done every single semester for individuals. But my rebuttal to people who are questioning the cost is, gas is expensive as hell right now. Like, it's just expensive as hell. And we can complain all we want to about how much the gas costs or whatever, but we always put gas in the car. And the reason why we put gas in the car is because we're trying to go somewhere. And if we have a job, we're trying to go somewhere that's important. Well, what's more important than the child and finding or getting to the destination of their purpose? There's not a lot of things that's more important than that. So it does cost, because as gas is valuable, so is curriculum and services that's going to allow a child to get to their destination. Those are just as valuable as a person trying to get to a physical destination or a physical location. So the cost is not that much. Again, it's $300 for 12 weeks every semester. Typically, we'll do 3 semesters per year. So you're looking at around $900 for the year for the semesters. The first course or the first couple semesters is all going to be based on human development, just human development. And we've partnered with 2 organizations that are going to allow us, and really 3 organizations that's going to allow us from an educational standpoint. And those organizations is, one, we've partnered with MTA, which is More Than Athletics. They're going to play a huge role in helping athletes from an academic standpoint, college counseling. And it's just one of those things that all athletes need. You can't shy away from that, because most athletes want to play college sports. And so that's an aspect that we got to cover, as well as these human development human development aspects as well.
Right. Like how scholarships work, if you're NAIA, about if you can get a full ride or not, a lot of the things where once you start to become an athlete who's getting some notoriety, you're really going to want to take advantage of some of this information that MTA provides, because it'll help parents especially be able to navigate what a scholarship looks like, a partial scholarship, the difference between the NAIA, NCAA, academic requirements as far as SAC, ACT scores are concerned, GPA, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of questions that parents have as the kids starting to be recruited that will have classroom work for parents as well, that they can get that information.
And let me explain a little bit more as to why the college counselor is critical. There's been a few instances in my career, most recently, like a couple of weeks ago, where an athlete who's a high-level athlete has a scholarship, and then we get a call from the schools that are recruiting them and saying he's not going to qualify if he doesn't get this class done. And so we're not saying that academic advisors do not do their job, because there's a lot of tremendous academic advisors. We're saying that when you're a college or you're an athlete, you're trying to go to college, that it's different than actually just being a student just trying to graduate. There's certain requirements that are needed for athletes that are trying to go to college. And if he didn't take a class, he would have took a D1 scholarship, and it would have been wasted where he would have gone to JUCO. But thanks to the college counseling and MTA, it was able to be caught. And because it was caught, it was taken care of and handled. And now this guy is good to go for school. We don't want anybody having to go through that because it's stressful on every single individual that have to deal with that on their end. So if we can get them in 7th and 8th grade learning about what it is that they need, by the time they get to that point, they should be understanding, and the parents should be educated and empowered to actually help their children in the process of what they're doing. The other organization that we're going to partner with is Donovan Martin Mental Performance, right? We talk a lot about the physical when it comes to training, but Donovan is going to help with the mental side of peaking athletes to get to a certain point, right? It's all psychological. It's the brain, how it works, science backing it or whatnot. So Donovan Martin is going to be one of the people that we are partnered with as we can get him to help these athletes. The other organization that we're going to partner with is going to be Courageous Healing, which is Aaron and Janelle, who work with mental health as well. So Donovan and Aaron and Janelle, they're going to be working with the mental aspect of every athlete. And there's going to be different ways that, like most notably, Courageous Healing is going to help with emotional intelligence and just making children aware of the emotional side of things and being intelligent and when to use it, where it comes from, and things. And so there's going to be a multitude of partnerships that's going to allow us to really work together and collaborate for the benefit of the children. We do have some partnerships in the entrepreneur side. I'm not going to say the names of them right now. You'll learn those as we go. But we got some high level partnerships from an entrepreneur standpoint, as well as just getting into the field, working type of aspect that we have. But the first one that we're going to focus on, the first foundational course, our focus of study is going to be human development. So we want these children to develop as human beings. That means that we're going to focus on self-identity before and beyond sports. We're going to focus on building the will. We're going to focus on the acquisition of humility. We're going to focus on respecting authority, service beyond self, overcoming difficulty. Like, those are things that our children need to know, right? We can't keep on just saying, be tough or figure it out. Like, we got to help them and guide them in a manner that they need guided in. So those are going to be the foundational focuses for the first couple semesters. How do we get this person to really mature as an individual to where, 2 semesters from now, they're not even the same individual. They're completely different than what they was before they got into it. The benefit, we believe, is that there's going to be a lot of self-discovery and self-improvement. That's going to be huge for everybody involved. We believe that there's going to be a lot of principle extraction and integrity application, character refinement, leadership maturation, peer and mentor accountability, which is going to be critical. That is going to be the one thing that's going to be critical. Is we're not just doing stuff and giving stuff. There's going to be accountability level and a responsibility level that these athletes are going to have to grow into, because the standard is going to be the standard. We're not going to deviate from the standard. We're going to challenge them just as much as we would challenge ourselves. And so that's going to be kind of the setup as we go through stuff. There's going to be a lot more information that does come in. But again, there's going to be 50 spots available. They're going to be cohorts broken down into certain grades. So you have 7th and 8th, you have 9th and 10th, you have 11th and 12th, you have your college, and then you have some pro athletes that'll be helping out as well, giving some games to these young athletes. The semester is going to start October 2021, and then the cost is going to be $300 per semester. That includes, again, reading and materials. And if you obviously want more information, again, you can text 260-217-4881, and then you'll get a response. You'll sign into that, and then we'll get you rolling in terms of more information as it comes and goes, as it relates to the School of Momentum. You also can email info@tractionap.com. That's info@tractionap.com to get more information as we go through it. So with all that being said, we're going to kind of get more into this, and we're going to get some more lives to give more people information on what we got going on. But man, we're excited because we think we can change the game, and we think we will change the game completely. And we have all the athletes, whether they're at this level or this level, To us, it doesn't matter. If you're an athlete, we got you, and we believe we can help you cultivate yourself. Therefore, you can go serve the world as you need to serve the world based on your purpose and living your purpose. So, D, I don't have anything else. It's 8:29. We actually did a really good job because I was thinking we was going. We can go
on us. That's good because we know how we can go.
So, if anybody have any questions, again, text us. We'll have some posts where you can, you can get the contact information to text us. But we definitely look forward to really ramping it up and changing the game with these athletes that we currently have inside the city and outside the city that are off to college and at the pro level. So.
Real people, real influence, and real impact, man.
Absolutely. So we going at it. So are we out? I know it's a storm coming. It looked like it's
getting bad out there.
So peace.
Make sure all my windows are up.
So peace, everybody, and we look forward to getting more information to y'all.
Yeah.